The city was alive with rushing cars, glowing billboards, and people who never seemed to stop. Yet in one small forgotten corner of the busy streets sat a young man with nothing but a wooden box, a few brushes, and the weight of the world on his shoulders. His name was Jack. Jack was 20 years old. His skin was dark, his clothes were worn out, and his eyes carried the kind of sadness you only see in someone who has lost more than he should at such a young age. His parents had died when he was still a little boy, leaving him with nothing, no wealth, no family name, not even a safe home. But fate had been kind enough to give him one thing, an old man who had taken him in. The man wasn't rich. In fact, he was poor himself, living in an abandoned wooden house on the edge of the forest. But he raised Jack like his own, taught him about honesty, survival, and dignity even in poverty. Still, life in the city wasn't easy. To earn enough money for food, both for himself and the old man who had raised him, Jack polished shoes. He would sit by the roadside, waiting for strangers to stretch out their legs so he could shine away the dust and mud of the city. On this particular day, the sky had turned gray. Clouds were heavy, thunder rolled across the horizon, and soon the rain began to pour down in thick sheets. Jack pulled his thin jacket closer, but the water quickly soaked through. Yet he kept working, because if he didn't, there would be no dinner tonight. And then it happened. A shiny black car stopped a few feet away from him, the kind of car that screamed wealth. From inside stepped out a girl, maybe 17, maybe 18. She was beautiful in a way that made heads turn instantly. Long hair, delicate features, and the confidence of someone who had never known what hunger felt like. Her name was Catreen, the daughter of a millionaire. Catreen looked at Jack with disgust. She didn't see the boy who had lost everything. She didn't see the young man struggling to survive. All she saw was a poor boy kneeling in the mud, polishing shoes to make a few dollars. "Loser," she said with a smirk. "Poor people like you. Useless, good for nothing." The words hit Jack like cold water. He didn't reply. He simply looked down and kept working. But inside, something broke. Guys, pause for a second and imagine this. You're just trying to survive, doing honest work, and someone who has everything in life calls you worthless. How would you feel? Heartbroken? Angry? Or just numb? Before Jack could even process her cruelty, Catreen got back into her car. She started the engine, looked at him one last time, and then, intentionally, drove through a puddle right beside him. The dirty rainwater splashed all over Jack, drenching his already soaked clothes. Catreen laughed and sped off. Jack stood there quietly, his shirt clinging to his body, his hands muddy. He wanted to scream, to ask the world why it hated him so much, but he didn't. He just sighed and kept walking. But life has a way of surprising us. Not even a mile down the road, Catreen's car broke down. The rain was still pouring and the street was empty. No mechanics, no service centers, nothing. For the first time, the millionaire's daughter looked helpless. She stepped out of her car, water dripping down her expensive dress, frustration written all over her face. And then, from the distance, came Jack, walking silently, his eyes on the road, heading home after a long day. When he saw her, he stopped. Catreen was standing in the rain, arms crossed, clearly panicking. Jack, despite the insult she had thrown at him earlier, couldn't help but ask softly, "Ma'am, do you need help?" Catreen rolled her eyes. "Help? From you? Please, you polish shoes. Stick to that and get out of here." The words stung again, but Jack didn't argue. He simply nodded and started to walk away. What she didn't know was that Jack wasn't just a shoe polisher. He was actually a skilled mechanic, but no one in the city would ever hire him. Why? Because of his skin color. Because he didn't look like the kind of man they trusted. As Jack walked away, Catreen suddenly felt fear creep into her chest. The road was empty, the storm was getting worse, and darkness was quickly falling. If no one helped her, she would be stranded. For the first time in her life, she felt powerless. "Hey, wait!" she called out. Jack stopped and turned. Catreen bit her lip, then said reluctantly, "Can you fix my car?" Jack didn't answer. He just walked over, opened the hood, and in minutes, his skilled hands had solved the problem. The engine roared back to life. Catreen's eyes widened. You're a mechanic?" she asked. Jack simply wiped the rain from his face and said, "Yes, but no one hires me." He didn't explain further. Instead, he stepped back. The car is fine now. Without waiting for thanks, he started walking away again, the rain still pouring down. And guys, here's the twist. The girl who had called him a loser just minutes ago was now staring at him with a look she had never given anyone before. The rain hadn't stopped. If anything, it grew heavier, pounding the streets like drums of nature. Jack walked slowly, his shoes sinking into the puddles. He didn't mind the water anymore. He was used to discomfort. Hunger, cold, rejection, these were not strangers to him. Behind him, the expensive car hummed quietly. Inside sat Catreen, hands gripping the steering wheel. She bit her lip, her heart caught between pride and guilt. She had insulted this boy, humiliated him, and yet he had helped her without hesitation. Something about that burned inside her. She rolled down her window. "Hey, Jack!" Jack turned slightly, surprised that she even remembered his name. He hadn't told her, but somehow she must have overheard it from someone on the street earlier. "Get in, I'll drop you." "It's pouring out here." Jack shook his head. "No, thank you. I can walk." Catreen frowned. "Don't be stubborn. Just get in. You're already soaked." "I'm fine," Jack replied calmly, continuing down the road. But Catreen wasn't used to people refusing her. All her life, people obeyed her because of who she was, the daughter of Jeff, a powerful businessman. Yet this boy, poor, hungry, rejected by society, had a dignity she couldn't ignore. She drove slowly alongside him. "Listen, I'm saying sorry, okay? About earlier, just don't make me feel like a bad person." "Get in the car." Jack paused. For a moment, he looked at her through the rain. Her eyes were no longer filled with arrogance. They carried a hint of sincerity. After a deep sigh, he opened the passenger door and sat inside. The warmth of the car heater surrounded him. For the first time that day, Jack felt a little comfort. "I didn't know you could fix cars," Catreen said, breaking the silence. Jack stared out the window. "I know more than people think." "Then why are you polishing shoes?" "Why not work as a mechanic?" Jack chuckled bitterly. "Because no one hires me. They look at me and see nothing but a poor black kid. They don't care about my skills. They only care about what I look like." Catreen's heart twisted. She had been one of those people too, hadn't she? "Jack," she whispered, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. I was wrong." Jack turned his head, his deep eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, the car felt heavy with silence. "Words cut deep, Catreen," he said softly. "But it's okay. I'm used to it." Guys, think about that for a moment. Imagine being used to insults. Imagine carrying them every single day until they feel normal. Doesn't that break your heart? Catreen didn't know what to say. To break the tension, she smiled gently. "My name's Catreen, by the way. And you don't have to call me ma'am. Just Catreen." Jack hesitated, then nodded. "Jack," he said. "Just Jack." The rest of the ride was quiet. When they finally reached the forest, Catreen slowed the car. Before them stood an old wooden house, barely holding itself together. "This is your home?" she asked, shocked. Jack nodded. "Yes, I live here with my uncle. He's the only family I've got." Catreen's heart sank. She couldn't imagine living in such a place. Yet Jack carried himself with more strength than anyone she knew. "Jack," she said softly, "tomorrow don't go to work. Be ready, I'm going to give you a surprise." Jack frowned. "What kind of surprise?" She grinned mysteriously. "You'll see." He wanted to argue, but something in her eyes made him stop. Instead, he simply nodded and stepped out into the rain. Catreen watched him walk into the wooden house, his silhouette fading into the shadows. For the first time in her life, she wasn't thinking about money, luxury, or status. She was thinking about him, the boy with nothing, yet somehow with everything. Morning sunlight broke through the gray clouds after a night of heavy rain. The city streets glistened, fresh but muddy. Inside her luxurious bedroom, Catreen stood before the mirror, brushing her long hair. She looked perfect as always, dressed in clothes that cost more than what Jack earned in months. But something inside her felt different. She couldn't forget his face, the quiet strength in his eyes when he walked away, the way he fixed her car without asking for anything, and the dignity he carried despite being insulted. Jack wasn't like anyone she knew. "Today," she whispered to herself, "I'll show him a different world." Her father's driver pulled the car into the forest road later that afternoon. The expensive wheels crunched against gravel until the car stopped in front of Jack's house. Catreen stepped out, and for the first time she felt nervous. The wooden house looked so fragile, like one strong wind could bring it down. The roof was patched with old tin sheets. The windows cracked, and smoke from a tiny stove drifted out of a crooked chimney. An old man sat on the porch in a rocking chair, his gray hair wild, his hands trembling slightly as he held a small cup of tea. He looked up at her with curious eyes. "Hello, sir," Catreen said politely. "I'm looking for Jack." The old man smiled faintly. "He's at work, polishing shoes again." "You must be Catreen?" Her eyes widened. "You know my name?" The old man chuckled softly. "Jack told me about a girl who drove by yesterday. Said she called him names, but later called him by his real name. That's enough for me to remember." Catreen's cheeks flushed with shame. She wanted to explain, but the old man simply waved his hand. "Don't worry, child. Jack has a forgiving heart. That's why I love him like my own son." Guys, pause here. Imagine meeting the only family member of someone who has nothing, and the first thing that man tells you is how kind-hearted the boy is, even after being insulted. Doesn't that hit you right in the chest? Catreen bit her lip. "Can I wait for him here?" The old man nodded, gesturing to the porch. She sat down beside him, hearing the forest birds chirping, the silence of poverty all around her. For the first time, the millionaire's daughter felt out of place, not because of luxury missing, but because she was seeing life in its raw, painful form. After an hour, she grew restless. Finally, she decided to go find him. She knew exactly where he would be, on the roadside, polishing shoes. And she was right. There he was. Jack sat cross-legged on the muddy street, carefully shining the shoes of a businessman who didn't even look at him. The man paid him a few crumpled bills, muttered something under his breath, and walked away without a thank you. Catreen's chest tightened. She had never seen the struggle this close before. Jack's hands were darkened with polish, his clothes stained, his face tired, but his eyes still carried that quiet dignity. "Jack!" she called, stepping out of her car. He looked up, surprised. "Catreen, what are you doing here?" She smiled and held out her hand. "Come with me. You've worked enough today. I want to give you your payment." Jack frowned. "Payment?" "Yes," she insisted. "A surprise. My treat." He hesitated. He wasn't used to being offered kindness from people like her, but there was something different about her voice today, softer, warmer. Finally, he nodded and packed up his shoe polish kit. She led him to her car. As they drove through the city, Jack looked out the window in silence. He had never been inside such a luxurious car before. When they arrived at her family's mansion, Jack froze. The gates alone were taller than his entire house. Inside, golden chandeliers, marble floors, and priceless paintings welcomed them. Jack felt small, like a stranger in a world he didn't belong to. Catreen turned to him, her eyes sparkling. "Welcome to my home." But before Jack could say a word, voices boomed across the hall. "Catreen!" "Who is this?" Her father, Jeff, and her mother, Elizabeth, stepped out from the grand staircase. Their eyes landed on Jack, and instantly their faces hardened. Jeff's voice thundered. "You brought a beggar into our house? Are you out of your mind, Catreen?" Elizabeth sneered. "Look at him. Dirty, poor, probably a thief. How dare you?" Jack's chest tightened. He wanted to leave, but his feet felt heavy. He had heard insults his entire life, but somehow, hearing them in front of Catreen hurt more. Catreen stepped forward, her voice firm. "Stop, he's not a thief. His name is Jack. He's the one who helped me yesterday when my car broke down. And he's more honest and skilled than anyone you know." Her parents laughed bitterly. "You can't be serious. This boy, skilled, he's nothing but a shoe polisher." Catreen's eyes burned with tears. She turned to Jack and squeezed his hand. "Don't listen to them. I know who you are, and from today the world will know too." Guys, can you feel that moment? A rich girl standing against her own parents, defending a poor boy who everyone else calls worthless. This isn't just romance, it's rebellion. Jack looked at her, his heart racing. No one had ever stood up for him before. For the first time, he felt seen, truly seen. The air inside the mansion felt tense, almost suffocating. Jack stood silently, dripping from the rain, his old clothes a sharp contrast against the polished marble floor beneath his feet. Catreen's parents stared at him as though he were a stain on their perfect world. "Catreen!" Jeff said in a low but furious voice. "Do you understand what you're doing? You're bringing shame into this house. That boy has no place here." Elizabeth folded her arms. "We gave you everything, education, luxury, status, and this is how you repay us? By humiliating our family with him?" Jack lowered his gaze. He wanted to walk out to avoid this humiliation, but then he felt something, Catreen's hand gripping his tightly. She wasn't letting go. "No, Father. You're wrong," she said firmly. "The shame isn't in Jack, it's in us." For judging him, without even knowing his story, Elizabeth scoffed. "Story? What story could justify a boy like him living in our home?" Jack closed his eyes. His chest tightened as old memories rushed in. The fire, the screams, the smell of smoke. For years he had buried it deep, but now, with the world questioning his worth, he could no longer stay silent. He took a slow breath. "If you want to know, I'll tell you." The room grew quiet. Even Jeff paused, his arms crossed, but his curiosity piqued. "I was only 6 years old when I lost everything," Jack began, his voice low, steady. "My parents, they died in an accident. A fire burned down our house. I remember crying for them, but no one came. No relatives, no friends. Everyone disappeared when they saw there was nothing left for them to take." Catreen's eyes glistened with tears. Jack continued, "For weeks, I lived on the streets, hungry, alone. People looked at me the same way you're looking at me, right? Now, like I was dirt, like I didn't belong in their world. And maybe they were right. I was nothing." He paused, his hands trembling slightly. "Then one day an old man found me. He was poor, had nothing but a broken house in the forest. But he gave me food. He gave me shelter. He gave me love. He raised me as his own, even when he couldn't afford to raise himself." Jeff's jaw tightened, but something in his eyes softened for just a moment. Jack looked at the floor, his voice breaking. "Since then, I've been working every single day. Not for me, but for him. So he doesn't go to bed hungry. So he doesn't feel abandoned the way I once did. I polish shoes because no one will hire me as a mechanic. Not because I don't know the work, but because when they see me, they don't see talent. They only see color. They only see poverty." Silence. Catreen's tears finally fell. She stepped closer, her hand brushing against his cheek. "Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling. Elizabeth looked away, guilt flickering across her face. Jeff, however, still stood rigid. "That may be tragic," he said coldly, "but it doesn't change the fact that you are not fit for my daughter." "Fit?" Catreen snapped. "Do you even hear yourself? What makes a person fit, Father? Money? A last name? A mansion?" Jeff glared. "Yes, those things matter. Without them, you're nothing." Jack's heart sank, but before he could respond, Catreen turned fully to her father, her voice filled with fire. "No, Dad, you're wrong. Jack has more dignity than half the businessmen you deal with. He has more courage than anyone I've ever met. And you know what? He's not nothing. He's everything. Guys, let that sink in. Imagine someone standing up in a golden palace, shouting at millionaires that love and dignity are worth more than money. Wouldn't you want to cheer for her right now?" Jeff's face turned red with anger. "You're blinded, Catreen. This is not love. This is charity." But Catreen shook her head. "No, this is love. And you can laugh, you can insult, you can threaten me, but I won't back down. Jack is the one I choose. He's not a charity case. He's my heart." Jack's eyes widened. He had never expected anyone, let alone the daughter of a millionaire, to defend him like this. Elizabeth's voice softened. "Catreen, do you even realize what you're saying? Are you saying you want him to be your—" "Yes," Catreen interrupted, her voice steady now. "He is my boyfriend, and one day I will marry him." Jack felt the room spin. His lips parted, but no words came. He wanted to tell her how impossible that sounded, but then he saw the determination in her eyes. And for the first time in his life, he felt something stronger than pain. He felt hope. For a long moment, the mansion echoed with silence. Catreen's words still hung in the air. "He is my boyfriend, and one day I will marry him." Jeff's face burned with rage. Elizabeth gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth. Jack stood frozen, his heart pounding so loudly it felt like the room could hear it. Jeff slammed his fist against the table. "Catreen, enough! You don't know what you're saying. Love blinds you now, but tomorrow, when the world laughs at you for bringing a shoe polisher into this house, you'll regret it." Catreen didn't flinch. Her voice was calm but sharp. "Father, the world already laughs at us for being heartless, for worshiping money. But I don't care about their laughter. What matters is truth. What matters is love. And Jack is love." Jack's chest tightened. He wanted to protest, wanted to tell her not to risk everything for him. But her hand squeezed his tightly, silencing his doubts. Elizabeth stepped forward cautiously. "Jeff, maybe we should—" But Jeff cut her off. "No, I won't hear another word. This boy," he pointed angrily at Jack, "has tricked you with his sob story. He's after your wealth, Catreen. Can't you see it?" Jack's eyes flashed with hurt. "No," he said firmly, his voice steady. "I don't want your money. I've survived without it my whole life. All I've ever wanted is a chance to live with dignity, to feed the man who raised me, to use my skills instead of being judged for how I look." Guys, stop for a second. Imagine saying that to a billionaire face to face. Would you have that courage? Would you stand there and tell the truth even if it meant being thrown out? Elizabeth looked at Jack closely now. For the first time, she saw not a beggar, not a poor boy, but a man who had endured storms without breaking. Something inside her shifted. "Jeff," she whispered, "he's not lying. Look at him." Jeff turned, anger still blazing in his eyes. "Elizabeth, don't you dare!" But Catreen stepped forward, fire in her voice. "If you cannot see his worth, then maybe it's time you see mine. Because I won't let you make choices for my heart anymore." Jeff stared at his daughter in disbelief. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Not employees, not business partners, not even his wife. But here was his daughter, defying him for a boy who owned nothing. The silence stretched long, heavy, unbearable. Then finally, Jeff let out a long breath. "Fine," he said coldly. "If you believe in him so much, prove it. Let him show me that he's more than a shoe polisher. Let him handle something real, something that matters. Until then, he's not worthy of this family." Jack raised his head slowly. "What do you want me to do?" Jeff smirked. "Tomorrow morning, come to my office. I'll give you a task that no ordinary mechanic can handle. If you succeed, maybe I'll reconsider. If you fail, you walk away from my daughter forever." Catreen's heart raced. "Father, that's not fair!" But Jack held her hand gently. "It's okay, Catreen. I'll do it." Jeff narrowed his eyes. "We'll see if you're truly as skilled and honest as you claim." The conversation ended there, heavy and unresolved. Jack and Catreen left the mansion together, stepping into the cool night. The stars glimmered above, but Jack's mind was full of shadows. "Jack," Catreen whispered, "you don't have to do this. He's just testing you to break you." Jack smiled faintly, though sadness lingered in his eyes. "Maybe, but if this is the price for them to see me as more than a color, more than poverty, then I'll pay it. I'm not afraid of hard work. I've been tested my whole life." She hugged him tightly, her tears wetting his shoulder. "You're not alone anymore. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'll be by your side." And in that moment, Jack felt something he had never felt before. Not hunger, not pain, not even survival. He felt belonging. Guys, let me ask you, do you believe love can truly stand against society, against family, against years of prejudice? Or does money always win? Think about it. As Jack walked back into the forest that night, the old man greeted him with a gentle smile. "You look troubled, son. What happened?" Jack sat beside him, his voice heavy. "Uncle, tomorrow I have to prove myself. Not just to them, but maybe to the world." The old man placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "Then go with courage, Jack, because you've already proven yourself to me 1,000 times." And under the stars, Jack made a silent promise. Tomorrow, he would no longer be just the boy who polished shoes. Tomorrow, he would be the man who earned respect. The next morning, the city skyline shimmered with golden light. Jack stood outside Jeff's towering glass office building, his heart pounding like a drum. He wore the same old shirt, neatly washed, and shoes that had seen better days. Around him, businessmen in crisp suits walked past, giving him strange looks. But Jack didn't care. He wasn't here to impress them. He was here to prove himself. Inside the office, Jeff sat behind a massive oak desk. Papers, contracts, and screens surrounded him. He looked powerful, untouchable. Catreen sat nearby, her eyes full of hope, silently praying for Jack. Elizabeth stood quietly by the window, watching with curiosity. Jeff leaned back in his chair. "Jack," he said coldly, "if you want to be more than a shoe polisher, show me. Today you will fix a problem none of my engineers could solve." He snapped his fingers. Two men rolled in a broken luxury car part, the engine block from one of Jeff's private collection vehicles. "This," Jeff said, "is worth more than your life. It has been down for weeks. My mechanics failed. Fix it here now or walk away forever." The room grew silent. Jack stepped forward slowly, examining the part. His hands touched the metal gently, like an artist feeling the surface of a canvas. His mind raced. Years of hidden knowledge came back. The nights he spent secretly repairing machines, the afternoons studying broken engines no one else cared about. He asked for a few tools. At first, Jeff's men laughed. This kid thinks he's going to fix what trained engineers couldn't? But Jack ignored the laughter. He knelt, focused, and worked. His hands moved with precision, his eyes sharp, his determination unshakable. Hours passed. Sweat dripped down his forehead, but he didn't stop. Finally, the moment of truth. He reassembled the part, adjusted a final screw, and signaled. The men carried it out to the car. Jack himself slid under the hood, made the connections, and turned the ignition. For a moment, silence. Then, vroom! The engine roared to life. Smooth, powerful, perfect. The entire room froze. The mechanic stared in disbelief. Elizabeth gasped, her eyes wide with admiration. Catreen clapped her hands together, tears filling her eyes. And Jeff's face changed. For the first time, he looked at Jack not with contempt, but with respect. "You fixed it," Jeff said slowly, almost unable to believe it. "No one else could, but you did." Jack wiped his hands calmly. "Because you see, sir, talent doesn't belong to the rich or the poor. It belongs to those who work for it." Guys, tell me that didn't hit you hard. Wouldn't you want to stand up and applaud Jack at this exact moment? Jeff leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Jack, I was wrong about you." Elizabeth stepped forward, smiling warmly now. "Welcome to the family, Jack." Catreen ran to him, hugging him tightly, whispering, "I knew you could do it. I knew it!" But Jack pulled back, his voice soft. "There's one condition. I can't leave my uncle behind. He raised me when no one else would. I won't abandon him now." Jeff's stern face broke into the faintest smile. "Then bring him. From today, he is family too. We'll sit together, play chess, and share meals. You're not alone anymore." Tears filled Jack's eyes. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just surviving. He was home. The boy who once polished shoes in the rain was now respected, loved, and part of a family that had once rejected him. Jack's story isn't just about love, it's about dignity, courage, and breaking walls that society builds. It's proof that no matter where you start, you can rise. Would you have trusted Jack if you were Jeff? Do you believe true love can change even the hardest hearts? Drop your answers in the comments. I'm curious what you think. And hey, if you felt even a little emotion watching Jack's journey, like this story, subscribe for more emotional tales. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Your words mean more than you know.